This is lesson 2.3, multiplying and dividing integers. The rules for multiplying and dividing integers are much different from the ones that you use for addition and subtraction. You actually might know these rules and have been applying them in the past to your addition and subtraction if you've ever studied integers before. So some of these little rhymes and things to help you remember this may sound familiar. I'm going to show you three methods for remembering the rules for multiplying and dividing integers, and after this lesson you use whichever of the three methods works best for you. Most students find multiplying and dividing integers easier than addition and subtraction because you will simply multiply or divide the number parts as you normally would, ignoring the signs. Let me write down an example for you. I'm going to use this first example of -2 times +9 divided by -3. So you would solve this problem in using the order of operations because we have more than one operation here, and because we have just multiplication and division, we work from left to right. Just multiply the numeral parts together, ignoring the signs for a minute. 2 times 9 is 18. And 18 divided by 3 equals 6. Now the only thing you have left is to determine the sign of your final answer. So this is where we'll get into our three methods. First method is even and odd. This works especially well when you have a whole string of numbers that you're multiplying or dividing. You wouldn't have to just do two at a time. What you'll do for even and odd is simply only count the negative signs that you see in the problem. How many do you see in this problem? I only see one negative. So here's the rule. If you have an even number of negatives, then your final answer will always be positive. If you have an odd number of negatives, then your final answer will always be negative. I only had one negative symbol in the entire problem, therefore my answer would be negative because 1 is an odd number. Let's try the second example. Now because my paper is typed, all the numbers there are written horizontally, but here's what the problem would typically look like. 4 times -2 times -1 times 3, all divided by 6. So following the order of operations, you would have to do all the multiplication first. Well, 4 times 2 equals -8. -8 times -1 You're probably wondering, where did I come up? How did I know it was negative? Let me stop for a second and start that one over. What I wanted to show you is that you can wait till the very end to do your signs if you use this method of even and odds. So let's just do 4 times 2 is 8, times 1 is 8 again, times 3 is 24. So that top part, the top part is equal to 24. And the bottom part, we have a 6. We're going to ignore for the fact that that's a -6. 24 divided by 6 is simply just 4. Now we can find out the sign of our final answer just by counting the negative signs. How many negative signs do you see in the entire problem? I see 1, 2, 3. Is that even or odd? Well, 3 is an odd number, therefore your final answer is a negative, -4. So the advantage of using the even and odd method is that you can have a very large, complicated problem and you wouldn't have to worry about your sign until the very end of the problem. The second method is same and opposites. Same and opposites you will use whenever you're only multiplying two numbers together or dividing two numbers together, which is more typical than having a big complex problem. So when you're just multiplying or dividing two numbers together, you can use the same and opposite rule. If the signs are the same, like positive times a positive or negative times a negative, then your answer will always be positive. If they're opposites, like a positive times a negative or a negative times a positive, then your sign will always be negative. There's a chart that can help you remember this or see this. If you're a chart type person, you need to see it written all out. There it is. So I had the example of negative 56 divided by a negative 7. Well, 56 divided by 7 is 8. So just write the 8 without the sign, and then look at your signs. Well, I have two signs that are the same, so same signs equal a positive. Sometimes you may have heard a negative times a negative equals a positive, and you just chant that over and over again. Look at example 2. You have a negative 3 times a positive 10. Well, 3 times 10 is 30, so that's where they came up with the 30. And because one of those numbers is a negative and one of them is a positive, those are opposite signs, so that's why they came up with a negative 30. If you can't remember the chart, you could draw a picture, and that's what method 3 is showing you. Even though I know a chart is sort of like a picture too, but this little picture of the happy faces, if you can remember, a happy face is a positive and a sad face is a negative. Well, if you look at their little happy face, if our signs are the same, if they're both positive or both negative, kind of looks like two eyes and two eyebrows. There, he's happy. So if you ever have two numbers that are the same sign, then that means you have a positive person or a positive answer. But if we have opposite signs, like a negative and a positive, wow, it looks like he just got hit in the head. So that would be a pretty negative thing. Or the same thing with, what did I do before? I can't remember. A positive and negative. Still looks like got a black eye, so that would be a sad face or a negative sign. So when you multiply a positive times a negative, it's always a negative. Another way of drawing a picture, some people like to use this, is the sign triangle. If you draw this picture of a triangle with a plus and two negatives like this, what you will do is, using your thumb, cover up the two signs of your problem. I'm going to use the example 1 from method 2, this one right here, to show you what I mean. The first number is a negative 56, so I'm going to cover up the negative. And the second digit is a negative 7, so I'm going to cover up the other negative. You would use this with your fingers, and then that leaves you a positive. So that's why the answer is a positive. Let me try it again with the other example. I'm going to draw the sign triangle again. And on your paper, you wouldn't have to scratch them off. If you just use your fingers to cover them up, then the same triangle could be used for all the problems on the page. So you have a negative 3, so you would cover up with your thumb one of the negative signs. And a positive 10, so you cover up the positive sign. What are you left with? Well, a negative, and that's how they came up with the negative 30. Let's do a few problems on your guided practice. So choose whichever method works best for you, but I suggest whatever method you choose to use that you write the rule at the top of your page. Same with if you were taking a test. As soon as you sit down for your test, write your rules on your scrap paper. I would do the same thing for addition and subtraction. I would write SOB on my scrap paper as soon as I take my test. Kind of give yourself some notes to go by. So let's use multiplying and dividing. Maybe I'm going to use the happy sad face here. Oops, I put my eyebrows below it. I guess you could look like a football player, but you're supposed to still be a happy football player. So I got two eyebrows and two eyes. There I am, a happy, positive person, or the black eye, which is the negative person. Alright, so take a look at the first example. I have a negative 6 and a 0. And I didn't mean to throw this one right off the bat to you, but one thing to know is that 0 does not have a sign. It could be used as a positive or a negative. Negative 6 times 0. Well, what's 6 times 0? It's 0. And 0 does not have a sign. So this is why it didn't really matter if that was a positive 0 or a negative 0. Anything times 0 is just 0. You wouldn't put a plus or a minus sign on it. So we didn't really get to use our rules this time. Let's take a look at the next one across. Here you have a 7, which is positive, times a 3, which is positive. Well, 7 times 3 is 21. And would that be a happy person or a sad person? Well, they're both positives, so that would be a pretty happy thing. So that's why it's a positive 21. You don't have to write the plus sign or the positive sign in front of positive numbers. We all know that if we don't see the sign, that it is a positive number. Looking across, I'll do one more example for you, and then you're on your own for the rest of the page, and you can use the self-check and correct to see if you got the rest of these down. The next one, you have a 6 and a negative 10. Well, let's see. Is that a happy face or a sad face? You have a positive and a negative. Oh, that's a black guy. That'd be sad. So your answer would be a negative, and 6 times 10 is 60. Alright, go ahead and do the rest of the practices, and then do your self-check and correct to make sure you got these.